listen, guys, we're excited today to bring friend and colleague Richard Liebowitz, a Long Island attorney, to join us. And honestly, I'll say it, he won't say it, one of the best copyright attorneys in the country. Richard, we're having you here to have a little entertainment conversation. And also we have some questions from some viewers we thought we're going to ask you and you're going to answer them. How about that?
Oh, it's great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So listen, I've always thought, and I know the story, but I thought Duke and Amy would like to hear quickly the story of how did you get into law? Because you had a career before being a lawyer, right?
Yes. So I actually started out as a photographer, and I photographed many different cool things in New York, from the Nathan's hot dog eating contest in Coney Island to the New York City Marathon to the Brooklyn Cyclones in Coney Island. And I photographed many things for, for just kind of local things in the New York area. And when I would travel with all my friends and colleagues, they would always tell me, oh, all their photos got ripped off. Like the next day after they would publish it, they would see their work all over the place. And they didn't know what to do. They would tell me, oh, like, what should I do? Should I contact them? Should I invoice them? And I would tell them, how about you try suing them? They use your work without permission. And they would tell me, like, who's doing this type of law, and I was always fascinated with the law, and I was always very interested in litigation. So I basically went to law school and started my practice helping professional photographers, because I saw there was this need for photographers when their work got infringed upon that was occurring pretty much daily. And the photographers would contact the publications and they would just look the other way. There was this like brick wall between the photographer and the publication, and they would never get paid. So when I came around, I, then filed a lawsuit and helping photographers get paid. So I was always interested in the arts and photography. I was a filmmaker as well, made some feature-length films, and
Wow.
I published a book that documents my journeys traveling with an award-winning photographer in New York. And I explain what I learned traveling with him, and have some mini photo essays in there. So that's how I started in this business. That's how I got into it.
So, Richard, go ahead, Amy.
Since you've been in this business, and now that you've, I guess, made it more public that people are violating laws here, do you find that your caseload is lower? Has it decreased? Or do you find that it's, still staying steady?
Yeah, I think it's actually increasing. I think that a lot of these companies, it's a cost of doing business for them. So it's like, ultimately the photographer has to find the infringement, right? Which is difficult. And at my law firm, we actually built a software that could search and find where your photos are on the internet. So you could drop in thousands of photographs, and instantaneously you could find all the websites that have your photo on there. So then we let our clients know, look, here are the 50 websites that have your photo on there. Are any of them licensed? And most of the time they say, oh, no, none of them are licensed.
Richard,
And
what
we
is
vet
that
them,
website?
and we see which ones we could actually go after. And then we then register all the photographs with the U.S. Copyright Office, and then we file it in court. So I think that ultimately, to find the infringements, much easier today. And I do everything on contingency, so, there's no risk to the photographer as well. We only get paid when the photographer gets paid. And then getting your work registered with the Copyright Office, we upfront all that. All those things have to line up. And today, that's possible. So I think that, with these infringers, it's just, if we get caught, we have to pay out. And let's say they infringe upon, 100 photographs and they have to pay out on 2 of them, they're still ahead.
Okay.
So what is the website where someone can go to check their works? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so, so to search using the software that we have, I have photographers, they upload to our FTP server, and it's very easy. You just drop the photos like JPEGs into our FTP, and then the next day you get an email with all the different websites that have it, and then the photographers will just press approve or not approve. And then if they approve of it, then we go after the infringer and get them compensation for the infringement.
It's pretty fantastic.
Now, Richard, we have, as I told you at the top, and I told Duke and Amy, we had when we announced you were coming on the show, we had people who wrote to us have some questions. So the first question from our audience comes from Jamie from Memphis. Jamie, thank you for your question. Jamie writes, I went to a copy-free website and I used a photograph from there. I have nothing to worry about, right?
Okay, so Jamie, that's a great question, and that happens all the time. I get infringers that come up to me and say, "Oh, I got it from this free website or this free wallpaper, site." You see that all the time, like free wallpaper, free stock photos. But believe it or not, oftentimes photographs on those websites actually are not free photos or public domain photos. What happens is oftentimes people that upload the photographs to those sites are actually infringing upon the photographs themselves. And you could get caught if you take a photograph from one of these sites and it ends up being that it's not a free photograph, and you put it on your website. Copyright law is strict liability, which means that regardless of the fact of whether it was innocent or you didn't intend, you're liable. The damages comes down to whether it was willful or not. So in copyright world, if your work is registered timely with the Copyright Office, you could get damages between $750 to $150,000. So the range is very vast.
Ouch.
Yep, that could be very ouch. So when you see a lawsuit for $150,000 for just using a photo, the laws in the United States are very, very strict. And there have been cases that have awarded $150,000 before, and on top of it, you could get the plaintiff could get the attorney's fees back, which is very interesting in the copyright world. So I think you have to be very careful, where you get photographs from. And what I recommend, and I get people that come up to me and say, what should I do to double check? And the best thing to do is just contact the copyright owner or try to get the copyright owner. So what I would recommend is maybe do a quick Google reverse search on that particular photo that is on that free website. See if anything pops up. And it could be what could pop up is a photographer's website with the photo on there. And if you really want to use that photo, you contact them and say, oh, hey, I saw this photograph on this free website. Is it free or do I need to pay? So you just double check and you contact them and you make sure whether or not it's free or not. And if it's not and you use it, there's potential consequences. So I would definitely be very careful with these free photo websites.
Wow,
Duke, we got to use some care with some of this stuff, right, Duke?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So listen, Richard, along those lines, only because it just fits here, we have another question from another viewer, and we thank you. Lawrence from Maine has a question, which is, I think, a good one and apropos. Lawrence writes, am I free to use any pictures that people post on Facebook and just use them for whatever I want to use them for?
Okay, that's a great question. Social media and copyright is a very hot topic today. Everyone's posting photographs on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok now, the very big thing. So I want to take a step back and let your viewers know that when you're signing up for like Facebook and for these social media sites, in the very small print when you're signing up for these sites that no one wants to see, it's just like when you're signing a car lease or a mortgage. There's always these very small words and text in like 8-point font, italicized. No one could ever read it. You need a magnifying glass to actually see what it is. But on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, there are terms of service that actually grant the services, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, a license to use your work. So that just means that Facebook could use it. No one else could go onto the site and right-click it and put it onto their website. It just grants the actual social media sites a license, and that's for liability reasons. It's just like in anything. When you're signing up for a service, they're trying to protect themselves. So be wary what you post onto social media, because you never know, how many of you have seen, Facebook ads, commercials, or I saw actually in the subway in New York City, an ad for Twitter, where actually there was an advertisement in the subway with photographs on there. And those photographs were likely on Twitter. And when you sign up for Twitter, you're granting Twitter a license. So technically they could use it. But if a third party wants to use your photographs, from social media, like a publication, or if you own a website or a blog, you have to contact the person that posted the photograph. You, generally speaking, that is the author, but you have to be careful with that because you never know if someone actually posts someone else's photograph on there. So you could private message them and say, hey, is this your photograph or is this your video? I would like to, license it for, my website. What's the price? Or, and that's the proper protocols to license something from social media.
So interesting.
Duke, I think I've infringed on you 1,000 times. I do apologize.
I get that a lot.
I have a question. It's actually something from the modeling world. My children model, and we always need to sign a release. And I noticed several years ago, my son, it was a 3-year release for a packaging of a toy box. And just recently, I was walking through a store, and there was a new toy out with my son's face on it.
Oh, wow.
I never gave that permission. It was a 3-year. How does something like that work? Not just for, obviously, myself, but for all of the parents who are in that position like I am.
Yeah, that's actually a great question, very fascinating. So there's a law called right of publicity. And what is right of publicity? Right of publicity is technically not for the photographer, but it's for the subject matter in the photograph. So if you're, just for example, your son, in the photograph, your son has rights for basically commercial purposes. So if someone wants to use your name or likeness, this oftentimes occurs with celebrities, where using their image to promote a product. So here, putting on a product, the product company not only has to get the photographer's permission, whoever took, the photograph of your son, but also has to get permission from your son to use his image on the box. And so you could technically have a case against them for
There we go.
Yeah, and that's happened. I've had numerous cases where clothing companies using photographs of babies, on, their websites or on, packaging. So companies, when they're using things for commercial purposes, so it's like products or like advertisements, like in magazines or on billboards, those are all commercial purposes. And whoever wants to use it has to get the copyright owner's permission, the person who took the photograph, the author, and the person in the photograph, and then get signed releases from both of them. If not, they potentially have a claim for a right of publicity or copyright if they don't get the photographer's permission. So
that is really amazing.
Yeah, so
this is not easy, Richard. I thought you said this was going to be easy.
Yeah, right. I know. As simple as it seems, like very black and white, using it without permission, it actually has some complexities in it, that you need to know and understand. And companies don't want the average person to know, right? Because they want to get away with it. So it's important to educate and to understand what your rights are, as an individual living in this world, and what other people cannot get away with, and you have a rights to get paid for using your photo or using your name and likeness.
Richard, I have a question. As the subject of a video or a photo on a non-commercial venture where somebody just posts pictures and videos of me playing, do I have any say in what's put up or not put up?
Yes. So the aspect of right publicity when it's non-commercial, that is just the you have to get the permission from the copyright holder, not the person in it. So let's say, for example, someone is, and this happens all the time, right? In newspapers, right? Newspapers are, it's technically, is like, it's for editorial purposes. And you have pictures of politicians, in newspapers or just on websites. Those companies are not getting the subject matter's permission in the photograph because that's for editorial purposes. It's not for commercial, like a product. So those companies just have to get the copyright holder's permission and not the subject matters. So for the example, Duke, that you just said, if someone is taking, a video of you and just putting it on a website and saying, hey, here's, Duke, playing the guitar, in this video. And they just have to get the person who took that video, right, of you's permission before they post it. But they don't have to get your permission because it's just, on a website. They're just using it for editorial purposes. So they won't need, your particular permission, as a subject matter.
Richard, I got another question here a little closer to home. Jamal from the Bronx, home of the Yankees. Jamal asks, which is a good question. He says, can I use any picture taken by any photographer, or can I use any musical recording as long as I give the person credit? Am I home free?
Okay, so the answer to that is no. Even though you give someone credit for the photograph, you still have to get the copyright owner's permission before you post it. If you see it on social media, and it happens all the time, where brands, or companies are just doing like a hashtag or like @ and the photographer's name, and they think that, hey, we're allowed to now use your photograph because we credit you. And the law, says no. You still have to get the photographer's or the copyright holder's permission before you post, a photograph that's owned by that particular person. So I recommend you just contact them either via social media, or you contact them via their website, and you just say, hey, I like this photograph. We want to use it. What's your licensing fee? Let's negotiate, and then we could use it. And that's the proper way to go about licensing, photographs. And ultimately, that's how this business is still alive, right? Could you imagine if, everyone just went on the internet and went on Google Images and just right-clicked on everything, or took a screenshot, and next thing you know, photographs are all over the place. Everyone would be chaotic, but it's a major problem today with, photographs just being infringed left and right.
Yeah. So what happens if I have a photograph of myself and I share it with a friend via, let's just say, text message, and that person, do they now have ownership of that photograph?
Okay, so the answer to that is no. So did you take like a selfie? Is that like a selfie photograph, or was it like a photograph of, someone taking a picture of you?
It would be a selfie would be a good example.
Okay, so a selfie, you own the copyright to the photograph because you're the one who actually is taking the photograph. And if you supply that particular photograph to someone else, they don't own the photograph. You still do. But you want to make sure when you're doing that, especially in the world of, really professional photographers, when they're giving it to publications, that you make sure that there's an understanding of what they could do with the photograph. Because oftentimes I have photographers come up to me and say, oh, I gave this publication my photograph to be used just in the magazine. Mm-hmm. The next thing you know, it's used on Facebook, it's used on Instagram, it's used on an advertisement. And, there's no meeting in the minds. And I always just recommend put something in writing, put something in an email that says, hey, publication X, the particular use is only going to be for, this publication for X period of time. And
okay.
Put that in writing so that eventually down the road, if something happens, you have this piece of evidence in writing that says, hey, here judge, here jury, look what the sheet of paper says, and it's black and white. And then it's not a he said, she said type of thing. And it happens all the time where, I spoke to the photographer on the phone and he said I could use it for Facebook. And the photographer says, no, I never said that. So as long as you have something in writing, then you should be okay.
Okay, that's another great question, I believe.
Yes, it's really fascinating. It happens all the time. Like I had this case, very interesting case. Back in the day, I had two photographers that shot the band Motley Crue. Right? How many Motley Crue fans are there out there? Back in the 80s, right?
Oh, yeah.
Long hair and everything like that. Where I had these two photographers that photographed the band in the 1980s, and it was only supposed to be used for the albums back in the 80s. And one of the photographers shot Girls, Girls, Girls. How many of you remember that album? Very big, very famous. And there were invoices just for the album. And next thing you know, 20 years later, they used it on merchandise, and they used it on their final tour. And the photographers whipped out the invoices and said, hey, it was only supposed to be used for the album. And next thing you know, they're using it on, T-shirts and mugs.
Wow.
And it was an oops moment.
Oh, yeah.
So
Definitely.
very important. You get something in writing, and there it is. And it happened to be that one of the photographers had an invoice from 1982, I believe, in one of those yellow, typewritten things. And he had it on his shelf. It was perfect. He emailed it over to me and said, here it is, Richard. Here's the invoice. Here is what it was for, So,
wow.
It was very interesting. So it's very important to have that.
Do these same copyright laws apply for, let's just say, song lyrics?
Yes. So copyright applies to anything in a tangible medium. So it could be a photograph, a video, music, digital art, sculptures, paintings. This applies to all of that. And music, I've come across some music cases before. Oftentimes they're not as black and white as photos, because if you change, a chord, or you change something, in music, right, there's only limited amount of chords. So if you change something around a little bit, it could be, their own work, and changed around enough. But a photo, you steal a photo, infringe upon a photo, there it is. It's the same exact photo,
Sure.
But copyright laws do apply to music. And, there have been many big cases, out there, over the past, 5 years where, big artists, have infringed upon, independent artists, musical lyrics. So it's definitely very fascinating, and you never know.
Richard, I have a quick question regarding art. When we were doing the episode for Freddie Mercury, it was extremely hard to find photos of Freddie Mercury that I could use. In fact, I couldn't find any. And I fortunately found an amazing artist who painted a picture of him, who gave us permission to use it. But in doing so, I found what were paintings of a photograph. How does that work?
Yeah. So how many times have you seen it? Like, you go in New York City, you see a painting of a very famous a photograph, and it happens all the time. But that artist actually needs to get the photographer's permission, and that's called a derivative work. So a derivative work means that you're basically creating another piece of artwork based off of another piece of artwork.
Mm.
So, if you want to do that, you do have to get the photographer's permission. And, courts are kind of like back and forth on what's considered fair use or not. So fair use is a doctrine is a defense in the copyright world that says that someone could use your particular, work without permission. And one of the factors in determining whether use is fair or not is how much the particular work was changed or altered. So if the particular painting was changed, or let's say, for example, it's, you had a photograph of Muhammad Ali, right? That famous photograph of Muhammad Ali. Do you remember that, with the his boxing glove up, and you see the guy in the boxing rink? So let's say someone took that particular photograph and they put it, let's say in the middle of Times Square, right? Let's say it's like him and the background's all different, and it's changed enough where it could be transformative, that particular artist may say, oh, look, I changed it enough, so it's not recognizable to the original artwork, and oftentimes you have these appropriation artists. One of the big ones is Richard Prince, very famous appropriation artist that has taken photographers' work and transformed it. And a very famous case from 1992 goes way back, where this photographer actually sued Richard Prince for using one of his photographs and selling it for like tens of thousands of dollars. And all he did with the portrait was added blue to his eyes, his mouth, and added a guitar to the photograph. If anyone just want to Google that, look up Richard Prince, Patrick Carew versus Richard Prince, and up pops the photograph, and you'll see it. And everyone's stunned with the outcome of what happened in that case, because the court found out that was changed enough to be, fair use. I'm sorry, that's the year
Wow.
2000. What was it? 2000. Drawing a blank. 2013. I'm sorry. 1992 was another case. But as the years went on, basically the laws I think are becoming a little bit more favorable to artists that are changing things around, and I think that's just the way the world is evolving. But it's just so fascinating how someone could change so little, and the court could come out that the work is fair use.
So every case is...
Duke, back to your question, I think what does a lawyer always say? The two words, it depends.
Yeah, we can understand that. It depends on the exact situation. Wow.
Yep.
So interesting.
So, Richard, before we let you go, I have one last question, which I thought this was so off the wall. I don't even know what you're going to say to this. I'm going to edit this though because Colleen from Columbus, Ohio. Colleen, thank you for your question. Colleen asked a question. She says, last year I attended a country rock concert, and she names who the artist is. I don't want to say. And I discovered after I attended this concert, I was watching a video of the concert that was on TV, and my image is in the video. Am I entitled to get paid for that?
Yes, and the answer to that is 100% yes. If you see your photograph in a music video or just a news broadcast, and you see it and you do not give that particular person permission to use your photo, you have a claim. And they're using it, to make money, right? They're using it. And regardless of the fact of whether someone's using it to make money or not, you still have a claim against them. But here, actually using it in a music video, and I don't know how many likes it potentially got on YouTube, but a lot of times these music videos do millions of likes, and that's drawing a lot of people to come to their site and purchase music, So, yeah, she has a claim for copyright infringement for them using her photograph in the video.
Now, with regards to that, aren't there also circumstances where they will post signs all over the place saying this event is being filmed? If you don't want to be part of the film, you have to leave the area.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, that's come up a lot with when you purchase a ticket. So sometimes, again, going back to the very small print that we're talking about, sometimes the back of the ticket on some of these, individual, I think, concerts, sometimes they even say on the back of it, I don't think it's really so enforceable, but, potentially it could be as a contract. But sometimes in the back of a ticket, it says that any photograph that you take at this concert's owned by, the musician, which is crazy. And sometimes, that's come up with some famous musicians that have done that. And there's always an outrage between the photographer and the musician saying, no, I'm going in there as a freelancer. I own the copyright to the photograph. The musician cannot use the photograph. And next thing you know, you see the musician put the photograph on Facebook or Instagram that says, look at me at the concert hall at Madison Square Garden, and it happens all the time.
Wow.
And musicians are trying to come up with, sly ways to try to come out to use the photographs. But ultimately, they have to contact the photographer. They have to do it the old-fashioned way. You have to contact the photographer, get them to agree to a license, and then you could use the photograph. Plain and simple, very easy. Ask permission.
Well, Richard, I got to tell you, on behalf of Duke and Amy and I, we could go on for hours, and
Totally.
we have a lot of questions that were asked we didn't even get to, but we just want to thank you for some time today. It's a fascinating topic. It really is. Even the most mundane questions, particularly with today's technology, how fast it's moving, social media, all the things that are changing in our society, just makes it a very compelling, very riveting topic. So we thank you for a few minutes today. And I will tell you, there's a lot of questions we just simply did not get to.
Thank you guys very much for having me. I really had a great time. Very fascinating area of the law.
Richard, what
website
can people go to if they want to upload their photos to have you take a look or do some of the things? Yeah, you could just
contact me via my website, Liebowitzlawfirm.com, Liebowitz lawfirm.com, and you could contact us, and then we could give you the link to upload the photographs. And you never know, your photograph could be used on a major website, and and you may not know about it. So it's very quite fascinating, to see where your work is.
Great stuff, Richard. Well, listen, thank you so much. Be well. And boy, I'll tell you, I better check my photographs. Those photographs, Amy, we used of Duke. We got to take those down right away, okay?
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Richard.
Had a great time.
Thank you,
Thank
Richard,
you.
so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
being
much.
Thank you.